please take your seats? Thank you.
Hi, good morning. I'm so happy, all the energy that we have here in the room. Buenos dias, Brownsville. Good morning, Brownsville. Raise your hand if you're inquieta or curious. Yes. And I think be ready. We'll have a wonderful networking after the event where you're going to be able to meet one another, network, be curious, ask questions, and just get to know one another, which is so important. I'm Helen Ramirez. I'm the Deputy City Manager for the City of Brownsville. Thank you. I'm also the Executive Director and CEO of the Greater Brownsville Incentives Corporation, which is the Economic Development Type A Corporation for the city, so fun. To me, it's an absolute privilege to be here before you as the MC of INQUIETA. My sister said, hey, can you do the INQUIETA Roadshow and then go to California? I said, wait, let's have our first event and then we'll see if we take it on the road. But I do want to, we have a lot of special guests today. We have Texas Workforce Commissioner Julian Alvarez is here. City of Brownsville Commissioner District 1 Nerth Galonsky, and also Vice Chair of Big GPIC. City of Brownsville Commissioner Rose Gowen, At-Large B, and Treasurer of GBIC. City of Brownsville Commissioner District 3 Roy de los Santos. We have Pat Hobbs, who's the Executive Director of Workforce Solutions Cameron. I know he'll be speaking. And then we have our Greater Brownsville Incentives Corporation Board Member Jensen's here as well. So this event was hatched or created in partnership with Texas Workforce Commission and the city and the Greater Brownsville Incentives Corporation. I really like to say that those conversations that we have when Commissioner Alvarez had with my staff member, Carla de la Rivas, and that really kind of was the impetus of the start of this conference and event that we're having here to really empower women in all future generations. So the important part of the collaboration we have with DHR Health and Workforce Solutions Cameron, and I would say every event is hatched with some seed funding. And so I'd like to thank our platinum sponsors, which is DHR Health, Brownsville Public Utilities Board, and the City of Brownsville. So if you work for those organizations, please stand up because your entities have sponsored this event. PUB, COB, or GPIC. Thank you. Look at that. Also special thanks to Fruya Motors for helping us support the event. You're going to have some goodie bags at the networking event. And also just all these outstanding organizations that do realize that women are our future and we have the right to be empowered and grow and support one another. One way, so, in talking to certain women and how they were influenced throughout their lives and their career, there's a story that always comes up with many high school students or young women. They refer to a specific event that they've been invited to. And so that's why it was very important for us to invite our high school students representing different high schools here in Brownsville and their teachers to be a part of this event. So I want you to stand. Our students from Brownsville ISD, our women high school students. IDEA, from Harmony, and from St. Joseph Academy. So with that, I'd like to introduce City Commissioner Nerth Galonsky. She was born and raised in Brownsville, Texas. Served as the District 1 City Commissioner for Brownsville since June of 2019. Graduated from Stanford University with her bachelor's degree in International Relations and Spanish Literature. Went to Southern Methodist University for law school and received her master's in business administration from the University of Texas. What can I say, Commissioner, but she also serves as the vice chair of the Greater Brownsville Senate Corporation. She has a relentless support for her district, for transit, for library services, for many services in our southmost area. And also important to her is employment opportunities and growth within the city of Brownsville. She's also a great communicator in Spanish. So I really admire the fact that she, at council meetings, commission meetings, and different meetings, she's our unofficial official translator for the city of Brownsville. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Oh, is it the sound? Yes. Good morning, everyone. It's so great to be here and to see so many women here. You have no idea how events like this really inspire me, and this is what it's really all about. Last month we had El Día de la Mujer in partnership with Roca and various other organizations, and this one I'm glad that we're continuing it. We should continue it like on a monthly basis because there's so much to learn and so many topics to cover. Just last month was Women's History Month, and I think we need to, today's like honestly probably the best time to be a woman. I think all of y'all would agree. But we also have to recognize and thank all the women who have blazed the trails for us, because without them we wouldn't be here. Whether it's your mom who encouraged you to complete your education or go out and do something that you didn't want. Elsa, who is over there, she tells me she's got a really supportive husband, but the way that she pushes herself to try something new, we have to encourage all the women, whether it's a mentor at work or a friend. Anna, I wouldn't be able to do all this stuff without you. Our conversations are always very fulfilling for me. Now I'm gonna get emotional, but so in essence, I wanna let y'all know, I can't be more thankful. This is the greatest time to be a woman, especially a woman leader, whether it's in your community, in your job, at the school where your kids are going. Take advantage of them, because we're without our voices and without making ourselves heard, nothing will happen. So I love speaking to, whether it's a Girl Scouts or high schoolers, college students, encourage them all. I'll tell you a little bit about, so some of y'all might know, hi Julian. Julian knows me from back when I was at PUB, and so he can probably tell that I would represent, at ResTech, right? And you all probably can relate to this. When you walk into a room and it's a meeting and you're either the only female or one of very few. Like you totally feel it and everyone else feels it in the room. So Julian knows me from back then. And well, so as y'all know, I was born and raised in Brownsville, and I came back it'll be 10 years in November. And shortly after I came back, I was appointed to PUB, which really transformed my life. And I'm glad to see all my PUB friends here, and I'm glad that there's all these women, because PUB, you wouldn't think that it was very female, but there's a lot of strong women leading different departments and just doing a day-to-day job, and I'm glad that y'all are there because it's really invaluable. So, and I'm so glad I started there because it's such a good training ground. If you can make it through PUB, then you can make it anywhere. Y'all will know. I don't know. I'll be honest. My background. So I was a lawyer, and I used to do child welfare law. I would represent either parents or kids in the beginning when they were involved in CPS cases, and then the last 3 years that I was living in Dallas, I was a prosecutor at CPS. So I had no knowledge about engineering, water, wastewater, electric. That was all way above me. But they teach you how to do it. And well, being a woman, people just assume that you don't know these things. But so I learned, if y'all know Trey Garza, he used to be a municipal court judge, and he's a lawyer around town. He was in my class in high school. I remember early on in high school, he would say, Nerith, the one thing is, people might think you're dumb, but if you open up your mouth and you prove to them that you're dumb, then it's all over. So that's always been ingrained in me since high school. So when I started out at PUB, I learned to always just be quiet and try not to come across as dumb. But it's thanks to the PUB experience that I've learned how to assert myself. It's okay to acknowledge that you don't know that you don't know something, or have them explain it to you. And I think that's what we need to make more acceptable, because men won't do it. Men, they walk into a room, they dominate it, they know what's happening, whereas women, y'all know this, and we communicate differently, we give different ideas, and this is why we need to be more active, more vocal in our day-to-day lives. And so from PUB, I learned to just go with the flow, and also to try to feel comfortable in places where I might not know really what I'm doing. But once I got into the city commission, that background really helped. And I'm so glad that I have fellow women. Dr. Gowan, you are an inspiration. Mm-hmm. If I could be like you. You have been there like for the longest of times, and I've always said this, you're the only city commissioner who has a legacy. Like, there's been good commissioners too, but you have a very well-defined legacy. You know, everyone knows what you stand for, and it's very clear. I hope to one day leave a legacy like that. Hopefully it's for the Southmost. So, that's all I really, because I could probably go on and on. It's, I would encourage you all, speak up, and always mentor, encourage fellow women, whether it's the young girls, high schoolers, college. Give everyone an opportunity, because they're looking at you. I always am surprised at who reaches out to me and who's paying attention, because they're all paying attention. So stand up for, or I really do thank the people who have opened up the paths for us, but then also opened up more opportunities for other women, because it is important. And I hope we need more leadership, female leadership in our city, in our community, because as y'all know, we're underrepresented, especially in certain cities in the Valley and in certain fields. So I'm especially proud of the women who are in those male-dominated fields, and more power to you. But please enjoy that and enjoy the presentation, and hopefully it's the beginning of many other women empowering events like this that we can have in our community. So enjoy.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Commissioner Galonsky, for those authentic, real words, right, of our own experiences. Next, I would like to introduce our relentless Commissioner Alvarez. Commissioner Alvarez III is the commissioner representing labor in the Texas Workforce Commission. Governor Greg Abbott reappointed him to the 3-member commission on March 7th of 2017. As a labor commissioner, Julian Alvarez represents the interests of more than 14 million Texans. That's a lot of workers. With respect to TWC services, and ensures that the concerns are considered at all commission actions. Prior to his appointment, Commissioner Alvarez served as the president and CEO of the Rio Grande Valley Partnership, fostering relationships and coordinating programs to advance economic development at a regional level, and of course, employment opportunities. He served as the Texas Regional Director for U.S. Senator Kay Bailey Hutchinson, advising on legislative and policy issues related to South Texas. Yes! Prior to that, Alvarez served on the South Texas Drug Task Force as a state trooper for the Texas Department of Public Safety. After that service in DPS, Alvarez inspired stewardship and leadership as the director of college information for the Texas State Tech College, or TSTC, in Harlingen. Julian is a true advocate and champion of women in the workforce, as you will be seeing for the first time some of the new 21st century innovative programs that TWC, because sometimes we don't know what the state does, right? We see the state up here, but the state is here, is in the city, and is telling you how we're gonna improve the workforce and situation of women here in Brownsville, Cameron County, South Texas. Thank you.
Helen almost, am I on?
Yep.
Helen almost kissed me. We went the same direction. Don't want to spread any rumors. Hey, so I wanted to make sure, one of the things that I always make sure whenever I go speak is that the podium's not taller than I am. because you'll hear me, but you never saw me. So I'm glad that we were able to accommodate that today. Wow, I agree with the folks that are here representing today's event. You could feel the energy as you walked in today. And there's nothing that gives me more pleasure than to actually be invited to come to the Valley and talk about all the great stuff that you're doing, and especially in Brownsville, Texas. Just last week, yes. So just last week, and I'm sorry to the other high schools, veterans, Hannah, I wore the Pace colors today. Sorry, I'm not, that don't mean that's the only school that I support. For you that don't know, I saw some of you laughing when you heard that I used to be a highway patrolman. And there was a lady that said, you know, I recognize you from somewhere, I just don't know where. And I said, well, I used to be a highway patrolman. And she goes, maybe that's it. And I said, well, turn on and start crying, and I'll see if I remembered you. No, I'm just kidding. So, one story before I start with my presentation. And so that is that my last class in college, I went to Texas A&I University in Kingsville, but the last, that's right, go Hoggies. I don't know what our sign is, so I'm sorry. But I do know that the last class that I needed to graduate was a psychology class. And the only class that they had, now keep in mind, my dad being from Harlingen paid for our tuition to go there, so he paid as we went. So it took me a little longer to graduate, but hey, what? At the end of the day, I graduated from college, right? And so, graduated debt-free. My dad paid for it. He was a car salesman here, actually at Tipton Ford. And so my father working here actually paid my tuition as he worked. But one of the things that I found that was interesting was the last class that I needed, again, was a psychology class, and the class was Women's Studies by Dr. Torres Rains, Women's Studies. And they said, hey, look, this class is full of women. That you want to graduate in the summer, you're going to have to take it. And I said, I'll take it. Walked in, 32 women. They were sitting in a room, all in a circle. I was the only man in there. And let me tell you, every day they attacked me about something. But that's okay. So they would say, Mr. Alvarez, when you pick a car, what kind of car do you want? Well, I want something that sells good, resale value, good engine, big engine, it's fast, 0 to 60, whatever. That's what a guy looks at. What a woman was looking at, does it have a mirror on the driver's side? Do I look good in it? Is it in red? And all that. So, wow. But the perspective of what I was learning throughout that semester changed. I mean, it was amazing, some of the things. I think every man should take that course, because there were so many things that I learned from that class. From the end of the semester, right before I graduated, they asked me, Mr. Alvarez, what did you learn from the class that you took with us? Because you've come a long way. And they said, if you could say one thing, what would you say after learning and being in this class for the semester? And I said, I hate men. No, just kidding. Just kidding. But anyway, I just wanted to tell you a story. It was a great story. All right. So I'm here to share with you all the great stuff that you're doing. And I'm glad to see my good friend Anna's here with the McDonald's franchise, who is one of your own, who not only has McDonald's franchises here in Brownsville, but in San Antonio and other parts of the state. How cool is that? That's amazing. And there are many of you in this room that have accomplished that as well. And many of you inspire to do that, especially our high school students. That's why they're here. And then we have Rita Hernandez, who's opening up a school, and tomorrow's our first class. That's amazing that they're teaching healthcare professionals, and you're going to see that in here. And we're training women and men, but the majority of the folks that are going to be going into the courses are women at no expense to them, thanks to people like Pat Hobbs, who pay for that expense. So this young girl, back in 2017, 2018, we rolled out an initiative called Camp Code for Girls. Camp Code for Girls. We were hearing from industry like Toyota saying we don't have enough women and we don't have enough young people that know how to program the machinery here at Toyota. See, at Toyota in San Antonio, they turn on the ignition of a Toyota Tundra and Tacoma every 60 seconds. Every 60 seconds of the day, there is a new truck being made. Isn't that amazing? It goes from a frame to tires, the doors, the windows, the electrical stuff, the computers, all of that in 60 seconds. They build a truck. It's amazing. But what happens when that stuff goes down? When that machinery goes down, what's happening? Those robotics that your students are learning here at Texas Southmost College. Some of the finest schools in the country are here in this great city of ours. Yes, Texas Southmost College. I know BJ's here, and Miss Gonzalez, Angela. You know, BJ's here, and he's doing amazing jobs working with Steel Coast and what they're doing to train individuals for the future. These jobs, or I should say careers, that didn't exist 5 years ago are here today. And the finest institutions are training our young men and women. Now, many of our young men and women are going to be going to colleges outside of the Valley. I know the girls that I met earlier going to University of Houston, going to Rice, UTRGV, great institutions of higher ed. But they're just as good here in the Valley as well. We have great institutions here, and you all have been on the receiving end of multiple grants. This young girl, in a statement in KVEO, I guess KVEO, Channel 23, literally stated that I didn't know that careers in robotics were available to young girls. Can you believe that? That it took a middle school girl to teach me that there weren't enough careers, or if there wasn't an opportunity for a middle school girl to receive a credential that is right now in demand in robotics and in coding. She taught me that we weren't teaching you all those things. So Brownsville ISD was on the receiving end of the coding camp for girls, where 20 girls from Region 1 actually attended a camp where they could actually code. That's amazing that y'all did that. You all, that idea came from this room listening to young girls talking about that. That's paid for by our dime. We also sponsor First Robotics. First Robotics is a competition with high school kids where every year they compete against one another. Did you know that from talking to kids in the Valley and seeing the competition here regionally, that I experienced young kids that were disabled? These individuals were disabled, so they weren't able to compete in the competition. Hey, look, I need those individuals to work. And so what I ended up doing, because of a student that's here in the Valley, we were able to see that that group of folks were not receiving funding for training. Do you know that last year we passed, with the help of my fellow commissioners, we now have funding available for individuals that are deaf that can now compete in robotic competition, thanks to somebody in the Valley who said, how come we can't participate? Isn't that great? I mean, that deserves a round of applause. And some of the brightest kids that we've seen at these robotic competitions come from the Valley. They come from your back door. We're going to be at World Competition next weekend in Houston, where First Robotics is having world competition. The world competition. And some of the students from the Valley came from this district that will be competing at the next level against people from all over the world. See, students here will compete against the Westlakes and the Lake Travises and some of the best institutions, the high schools in the state. And you all are competing against them and winning. That's awesome. All right. So you'll see, whatever you're into, STEM is into too. Young girl from Brownsville. Next slide. You'll see on our next slide, what are we doing as a workforce to listen to employers? And I'm going to talk a little bit about Jim Tipton, who's here in your backyard. Do you know that Jim Tipton approached us and approached your local Workforce Solutions Board and says, we just don't have enough workers? Like, the unemployment rate in Texas prior to the pandemic was 3.7. Now, to some of the young kids, that may be like, well, it just seems right. I mean, 3.7. But when I was in high school, which, by the way, when Rita Hernandez and I were in high school, we used to walk around with pagers. Remember that, Ana? But, you know, we were all on the other side of the tracks. We didn't have money for the batteries, but we looked cool with the pagers. But we looked cool. And Rita had two, because one was for work, for her family, and the other one was for all her boyfriends. But that's all right. But Dr. Chavez's kids, they all understand that technology is changing every day. The unemployment rate prior to the pandemic was 3.7. We hadn't recorded that low since the early 70s when we started recording the unemployment. And right now we are at 4.4. That's after the pandemic. 4.4. Isn't that crazy? When we were in high school, as I mentioned earlier, the unemployment rate was in the 20s, double digits. Nobody was working. We were all in agriculture in a farming community. You name it, we were driving around and all you saw were cows and sheep and people working in agriculture. That's what our community was. But because of folks like you, investors in this community, the future workforce of this great state. Those that have been trained by great organizations and have been funded with organizations like TWCE, which is not Time Warner Cable. My dad thinks I work there. But like Texas Southmost College or VITA or some of the great programs or CCEI. These are great programs that exist in your community that are all here to help you at no expense to you. That's crazy. And then GBEC working so closely with our organization, telling us where the demand is, like at Steel Coast or AmFels. You know, before when we were growing up, we didn't even hear about those companies. Now that's all you talk about. You know, you had AmFels. You know, we all talk about the great things that our communities have, like SpaceX. Tell me how many other communities around the state can talk about having SpaceX in their backyard. Name it. No one. And someday Helen and Carla are going to be telling us, and Ramiro are going to say, hey, you know what? Can we step out real quick because they're going to make a launch? Isn't that great? Who else in the state, the country can actually brag about that? And you guys can. And what I'm sharing with you today, just so that you know, I talk about that wherever I go. Whether it's with Jeanette de la Cruz, who's really the commissioner of the Texas Workforce Commission, my chief of staff, you know, she's going to inform you, and she'll just remind us that there are so many great things that are happening in our backyard. So everything I'm going to share with you, like I said, I have a few slides that I just wanted to kind of encourage you, and just think outside the box. These women that are up here on the very top, these are all women who are incarcerated behind bars and in Lockhart Prison. And as I mentioned to you earlier about Jim Tipton, who took it upon himself to train these individuals on his own dime because he saw a need for mechanics. He trained these individuals that were male to be master mechanics who are still working with him. Isn't that amazing? Thinking outside the box, because the unemployment rate is getting so good in the valley. We're having to look for skilled talent. Now, we all know someone who's been incarcerated or in jail or wish they were, like the ex-wife or something like that, right? Well, I'm sorry, did I say that out loud? I didn't mean to. But things like that, that's happening right now because of people like you who are these visionaries. So we took it upon ourselves to train these individuals behind bars, these women, just like Jim Tipton did, and invest in their future. Which, by the way, Jim was so impressed with these individuals that he had hired to be master mechanics that he hired another one to be a car salesman, and he was car salesman in the year prior to the pandemic, made $189,000, and at the end of the year he gave him a Rolex watch because I saw it. That was somebody from your community, ladies and gentlemen. Well, ladies and one gentleman. Now you know how they feel, right? Thank you for what you're doing. Now, the simulator that you see where the gentlemen be underneath the girls, these are women in Lockhart Prison that are receiving an associate degree or some type of credential behind bars because I need them when they get released at the end of the day. This gentleman that's there is learning how to run an 18-wheeler because when he gets out, I need truck drivers. That's why we're able to address this logistic problem or the need for more truck drivers, because we're always thinking ahead. See, that's what we do in this great state of ours. We have always been proactive in our approach. These courses that I'm talking about actually take place in your backyard where we can train these people. And thanks to people like Dr. Chavez and the school districts and the folks that work with him and the superintendent and all the great folks, we've always been proactive in that approach. You see, ladies and gentlemen, during the pandemic, we recruited 70 companies to this great state of ours during the pandemic. How many other states can say they brought in 70 companies? And I'm not just talking about another McDonald's, which, by the way, everybody go there. You get to eat free today. No, I'm just kidding. Now she woke up. She got off the phone. No. We're talking about companies that require individuals to have a credential like these young women who have industry-recognized credentials. Not necessarily a four-year degree. Nothing wrong with a four-year degree. You look at the most demanding occupations in this great state of ours, you're going to see that it's really just in the IT and those associate or those industry-recognized credentials that are going to get you into those entry-level positions. Next. This was at Porter. Yay, Porter! First time that they had received a JET grant, Jobs Education for Texans. That's amazing that you guys were getting equipment and advanced technology. And just so that you know, next week I'll be here again with Dr. Chavez and his team, because we're going to give you another JED grant for equipment for training. And there's another one in the pipeline. And like I said, thanks to people like Angela and of course BJ from Texas Southmost College who are listening to industry needs. Right, Steel Coast?
Absolutely.
That's amazing. How we're listening to what the needs are, and we're putting people into work and not in jobs. This thing about jobs are no longer there. You see, Ms. O'Quinn used to work at a McDonald's, and now she owns multiple McDonald's. Those are careers. And that's what we all inspire to do. Yes. Next slide. So, high school student, healthcare. Credentials that this young lady is going to get are already needed at the hospitals, like a DHR, and you'll hear from them and the partnership that we have with the DHR folks. And the conversations we're having with the board of directors right now, the board of nursing, I should say, to create this new type of nurse that we need. You see, between now and 2032, 10 years from today, we're going to need 57,000 more registered nurses. Where are we going to get them? And we've got to start now. And that's what we're doing here in this community, is providing the students necessary equipment so that they can get those credentials for those entry-level positions. Next slide. This was the nursing stakeholder meeting I had with major hospitals from around the state. MD Anderson, Baylor Scott and White, and of course, Doctors Hospital Renaissance, who is now in your community, providing some of the best health care. Now, you have some of the best doctors. Heck, I'm sitting next to one of them that's here at my table. I mean, it's amazing. When you walk into a store, you don't know what anybody does. You know nothing about what they do, but there are so many powerful people in this great community. You don't know if they're a doctor because, you know, they're wearing shorts and a t-shirt, their hat backwards and sunglasses, and you're like, wow, I mean, that guy looks like just a punk. And then they find out later that I was a commissioner of the Texas workforce. They were freaked out, right? But let me tell you, I know I've got to do some closing remarks, but let me tell you, there are so many great things that are happening in this great community of ours. I am humbled by the fact that you were able to put a program like this together where we can highlight all the great stuff that this great state of Texas is doing to support the ideas, the initiatives of women around the state. You all make the best machinists. You all make some of the best workers, and I've heard that from industry because attention to detail and how much time you put into the product. Take pride in the work that you do. To those students that are going to be graduating from high school and going to schools all over the country, don't forget your community, because we're the ones who put you there. Don't forget where you come from. And one of the things that I tell people when I see them in Austin or in Washington, wherever I've been, is I always tell people, especially from the Valley, because you'll see this, that we need to be humbled with our success, because many of you are very successful. Be humble. And if you have an opportunity not to stay with someone or continue mentoring them, there's nothing wrong with that. But providing them with that advice that's going to make them successful, do that. Take time to do that. Because I would encourage you, and I will just inform you, that there are so many great things happening in this great state of ours. But there are great people around this state, around this country, and around the world that come from not only Brownsville, Texas, but the Rio Grande Valley. Next slide. That was it. Okay, I'm being told to go, but I'm up, right? No more time. Anyway, I just want to let you know, thank you for allowing me to be here. If you guys have any complaints, if you didn't like my speech, see my chief of staff. It's her fault. No, I'm just kidding. Thanks for allowing me to be here. Thanks. I have 5 coins for the 5 seniors that are here represented. These come from my agency, and it's a token of our appreciation for all you do. And I am going to allow Helen at some point to give away this lapel pin that I wore during session. So if somebody wants it, I'll figure out how she's going to award this. All right? So thank you for allowing me to be here.
Wow, what about that energy? Thank you so much, Commissioner. You know, he talked about the quality of the people, the women and the men that work in Brownsville. And I like to always talk about a little bit about aerospace because he touched on SpaceX. And we have other companies, fintech companies. We have 9.8 and Space Ventures here, which is all women and female table, shout out. But I'd like to also talk about that 98% of Starship is built with Cameron County, Brownsville workforce. 98%. It's not Florida. It's not California. It's Brownsville. And that is the most powerful rocket ship in the world. And I want you to remember that. They've spent $430 million on the site. SpaceX spends $1 billion just in the state of Texas. We are the only South launch site in the state of Texas, here in Brownsville, Starbase. They're not only located at Starbase, Boca Chica, but they also have leased over 100,000 square feet of space at our Brownsville airport. Elon Musk donated a flap of the SN8 flap to our airport. And now he's like, that's not big enough. They deserve a bigger one, the MK1. So, you know, it really reminds, you know, part of our conversation, there's always going to be a stigma with being a city on the border. Whether you're at Paso, Juarez, Tijuana, you know, south of San Diego, you know, Brownsville, Matamoros, there's always stereotypes that go with that. But part of our job as women and leaders is telling the real story, right? And the fact that you have innovative companies here that are here, large, small startups and entrepreneurs. That's part of the conversation. So with that, I'd like to introduce our Cameron County Workforce Solutions Cameron, Mr. Pat Hobbs. Pat has served in various post-secondary leadership positions for the past 38 years. That's a lifetime career, Pat. He's one of the most experienced and knowledgeable college and workforce experts in the Valley. He's the go-to person here. His career began as a business instructor at Texas Southmost College, so our local community college, in 1971. And he climbed the ranks over the next 18 years to become the vice president for Texas technical education at the college. In 1989, Pat Hobbs took a position in administration at the Texas State Tech College, TSTC, which is another community college in Harlingen, which is very close to Brownsville, where he advanced to become the provost and vice president for academic affairs during the last years of his tenure there. He retired after 20 years from TSTC, then accepted the executive director position at Workforce Solutions Cameron 11 years ago, and he's here in Brownsville, and we're excited as the Greater Brownsville Sons Corporation to work hand in hand with your staff. One of the things I love about Pat is that he supports the women as his team, and their can-do attitude. They persevere, they help many of our companies, our larger companies, small size companies here in Brownsville. And he lets them lead those high profile projects. They lead those projects in collaboration with our team. So let's hear from Mr. Pat Hobbs.
Well, how would you like to follow that? That guy's got more energy. They call him the new tornado of Texas. And I'll be honest with you, prior to him taking the position, we never heard of the commissioner representing labor. They had one, but he wasn't around. This guy's everywhere. I'm so happy to be here. As Helen mentioned, I am surrounded by women in my agency. There's only me and 2 IT guys, and 1 programmer, and 25 women. And thank God for that, because they do all of the work, and they're very, very capable and good at it. And I wouldn't have it any other way. And I think if you talk to most male bosses, talk to Ruben. He knows who's boss. It's the women. Right, Anchor? Is it true for you? The women run the world. And we don't often tell them that because, you know, and they're hit even harder. But I represent one of the local workforce boards for the state. Julian and the other 2 commissioners are the commission. The money comes to TWC, to the state. The state funnels it down to 28 local boards, workforce boards, who are responsible for delivering direct services to clients. Now, me as the board, I don't deliver direct services. I've only got a staff of 25. But we subcontract all of those offices and activities to a contractor whose job it is to deliver direct services. And that's quite a job. My budget is normally about $34 million a year. This year, because of the pandemic, it's $57 million. The commission has been very, very proactive in delivering the funding that the communities need across the state to deal with the pandemic. The best example I can give you is childcare. Lourdes Lopez is my childcare director, and when the pandemic hit, it would have been easy for all of the childcare facilities to just close the doors and stay home and be safe like everybody else. But the state needed those childcare centers to remain open so that they could take care of the kids of the first responders and police and everybody else who had to work. We called them essential workers. Fortunately, they even called me an essential worker, so I got to work all through the pandemic. I don't know how to work a phone anyway, so I have to go into the office to work. But actually, the commission granted funding to the daycare centers to keep their doors open. Even if they had no kids, we paid them. On top of that, we paid them 20% on top of that during the pandemic, just to keep them open. And still, some of them had to close. But childcare was important to the area, the whole state, in fact. And I'm very proud of the commission and the fact that they stayed on top of those things when they saw a need. Even though they did get extra COVID funding, we called it, they passed it down to where it was needed to keep the economy rolling. So I'm here today just to represent the men in the world. And you'll notice that I stay on the fringes in case I have to make a quick exit. But I think it's important that particularly the ladies here, whether or not you're already employed or not, I don't think we as a board do a good job of letting people know what we do. You're going to see in a minute as I show the slides. We're kind of restricted. You wouldn't know this, but we're restricted in the advertising and promotion of our agency. We can do outreach. We can promote childcare and the other initiatives that we have, but we can't advertise our agency and everything that we do. So the only way the word gets out is meetings like this where I can present and maybe let you know what the services are, and you'll be surprised. And you can transfer that knowledge to the people around you and help us spread the word. Because an awful lot of kids nowadays are not getting the right messages. I'll grant you that 40 years ago, in my generation, we did a great job of convincing every parent, every counselor, every employer that if you didn't get a 4-year degree, you were going to be a failure in life. That is so wrong today. We've got another 40 years to turn that paradigm around. Julian will agree that now what we're hearing from industry and the economists and everybody is that 70% of tomorrow's jobs, 70%, do not require a 4-year degree. They do require some post-secondary credentialing or education above high school, but no longer do you have a 4-year degree. There are companies that were using the 4-year degree requirement as a culling factor, mainly to get rid of women when they walked in the door. You have a degree? No. No longer. The labor market that Julian mentioned is so tight right now that a lot of the companies are doing away with those culling factors. It doesn't matter whether you have a college degree or not. It matters what skill sets you have. If you can program a CNC machine, you're hired. I don't care what color you are, whether you're a woman or a man. I need those skill sets, and I'm paying dearly for it. So spread the word with me on that. Okay, here we go. God, what a good-looking guy. No wonder I had 3 wives. Here we go. Some of these are just facts I think may be of interest to you. The population in Cameron County is 423,000. 51.2% of the workforce is women. We have I think we have about 6,000 businesses in Cameron County. 40% of them, 14,800, are women-owned. In our unemployment claims, look how low that is. We got 423,000 people in population. There's only 267 unemployment claims in Cameron County. And of those, 38% are women, but it's still just 102. That tells you that our unemployment rate, right now it's at 6.1%. We're always a couple of percentages higher than the state average. But we're doing pretty good. The labor market is tight. I'll tell you right now that Steel Coast and SpaceX, everybody is looking for workers. And it's not the degreed people, it's that skill set. Can you weld? Can you weld aluminum? Can you weld stainless steel? You're hired. So it's a very competitive market right now. So the best advice I can give you is finish high school, number 1. Get some post-secondary education at TSC or TSTC. Get a credential that's recognized by industry, and you've got a career. So pass it along. Our labor force here, not all that 423 is the labor force. The labor force is those people who are working or looking for work. So that pool is 177,000. 166 of that pool is employed. So we've got almost 11,000 people that are unemployed in Cameron County. And we're working on that. Okay? The populations that we serve are everybody that's looking for work or needing workers. We've got 2 populations that we deal with, the job seeker and the employer. So we deal with both of those populations. A lot of them are unemployed, laid off workers, self-employed individuals, displaced homemakers, disabled, migrants, veterans, justice involved, school dropouts, English language learners, offenders, homeless, runaways, foster youth, pregnant or parenting youth, and disabled students. Have we hit anybody out here? No? Okay. The reason I've showed that list is because you may know someone who falls into one of those categories, but they don't know about Workforce Solutions Cameron. The best thing I can tell you today, and I've thought about this a little bit, is please help me pass the word about all of the services that I'm going to tell you we have to offer. If people, particularly women, don't make that step to visit our offices and talk with our counselors and the other people that work in the offices in the workforce centers, you've got to make that move. We're not out and about with our 5 or 6 claim workers. You've got to come to us. And we've got the offices in Brownsville and Harlingen. We've got the mobile unit. But you've got to make that step to come into our offices so that we can help you with this large array of services that we have to offer. And that includes a lot of things. I'm not going to go through all of this, but it includes everything from job search to job referrals. All kinds of things, all kinds of activities take place in those workforce centers that you need to know about. One thing I will mention on this slide is the LMI. That's labor market information. It's LMCI, actually, labor market and consumer information. On the TWC website up on the right, I think it's a blue box. Click on that blue box that says LMCI, and there's a whole array of programs, workshops, all kinds of stuff that people don't even know exist because they never have opened that website, Texas Workforce Commission, and clicked that blue box. I'm telling you, there's so much information there. We try and push that information down to the high schools so that in their CTE classes or CTE programs, they can learn how to click that button. That button will tell you which jobs are hot, which jobs are not, what they pay, where to get the education for them, how long it takes to get that education, and who's hiring. It's just a fantastic thing. There's another piece of it called reality check. I don't know if you ever, I know Dr. Chavez and his group have worked on it. But it makes sense. And for some of you parents, reality check does this. And I wish it had been around when I was a kid. But it says, how do you want to, what lifestyle do you want to live? You want to have a nice car? Check. You want to have nice clothes? Check. You want to have food all the time? Check, 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 check. Well, as the student is making those check marks, the program is adding up what it takes to pay for those wants, okay? And at the end, the kid says, okay, I'm finished. The program says, you're going to have to make $112,000 a year to live the way you want to live. And to make $112,000, you're going to have one of these jobs that pays that amount. And to get one of those jobs, you're going to have this education level or this certification. And here's where you get it, here's how much it costs, and here's how long it takes to get there. I mean, what a blessing that would be for a young kid. And I say this quite often, and it's not to be derogatory, but a lot of our youth don't know much. I mean, they may have graduated from high school by rote memory, but they don't know much. They haven't been trained in decision making and evaluating, critical thinking. In fact, this latest generation, they don't think it's important to come to work every day. They don't know what it is to work in teams. They're not respectful of their elders. I could go on and on and on. I love them, but I stay away from them. Let me go on here. I'll get carried away. Lots of services. We don't do unemployment insurance. People think that we do. We used to be the Texas Employment Commission. And we dealt with the unemployed. We don't do that anymore. We are the Employment Commission, not the Unemployment Commission. But we can help with unemployment claims. That actually comes from Health and Human Services, not the Texas Workforce Commission. We have a system called Work in Texas, and they're working on it. I think they're working to replace it pretty soon, but it's a job matching thing. If you walk into our workforce centers, we have career counselors who assess your capabilities, whether or not you already have an education, whether or not you have work experience, those kinds of things, and your current situation. If it's determined that you need training in order to get a job, we send you to training and we pay for it, up to $4,500 a year for 2 years. That helps, especially if you choose a vocation where there's not a college degree program available that provides financial aid. So, those kinds of decisions you've got to weigh. But Work in Texas is a job matching system, the whole state. An employer comes in and loads his job with all its qualifications and certifications and all of that. The job seeker walks in and loads their resume. Here's my skill set. And Work in Texas, through word recognition, matches those skill sets. Now, you're smart enough to know that if the employer doesn't load the correct words into his job, or the job seeker doesn't use the correct words to get the match, then the match is not going to happen. But we have people there to help you load your resume and put in the right words, and we help the employers as well. That system called Work in Texas is very, very useful for a lot of people. They can come into our offices, go into our resource room where we have a bunch of computers, get on to Work in Texas and spend half a day looking for jobs that match. That's available. What else we got? We do assessments, in-depth training for employers. We do referrals and, at several levels. An employer can come in and say, I've got X job, but I don't want just anybody off the street to know about this job because I need this specific type of training and so forth. And so when we load Work in Texas, we code it so that we first get the referrals, and if they match what we know the employer wants, we send them. If not, they stay there. That's important. We do career and college awareness, short-term pre-vocational services. That's only touching the top of it. Soft skills, I mentioned a while ago that the current generation has some, what my generation would call faults, shortcomings. One of which, from the employers, they were telling us, the kids coming out of even college, community college, have a good skill set. I mean, they know what they're doing. They can program the machine, but they have no soft skills. I don't know if you've heard this lately, but it's only a term that's been out there talked about for the last 3 or 4 years, soft skills. Ability to work in teams, take responsibility, all of those things that make you a good worker. And so we were training, we stole the soft skills training from Florida, kind of condensed it from 200 hours down to 20, and we forced all of our clients as they came into the office, before we sent them out to an employer, we made them take the soft skills course. And it was very beneficial. In fact, we pushed that soft skills course to BISD, the CTE programs, to the point where they see value in it. 2 minutes? Can you make it what? No. They see value in it. They've added it into their speech course, and now every student in BISD has to take a speech class, which includes, they don't know it yet, but includes the soft skills that we push to CTE. Let me quickly run through some of these things. Youth career awareness, lots of this. Training services, I mentioned the ITAs a while ago, the $4,500 a year for 2 years. And we particularly push non-traditional employment. I have an example of a lady, Claribel Lugo, who was unemployed for about a year, came into our offices, and she actually had once we assessed her and everything, she wanted to be a welder. She had been a retail clerk and all of that, the $8 a year jobs, $8 an hour jobs. But we put her into welding training. Then we put her into OJT, on-the-job training with Welding Works. She became a full-time welder with Welding Works and is now out at Amphils running a small crew because Welding Works is a contractor for Amphils. That's just one example. Got another example, Laura Hensley from Harlingen, who was taking care of her elderly mother, got laid off from her job. She came into the Harlingen office, and we assessed her capabilities. She was interested somehow in being a bus driver, a non-traditional employment. So we put her into bus driver training at TSTC. She became a Harlingen Consolidated School District bus driver at $15.50 an hour, and she's just loving it, and she's able to continue to take care of her elderly mother. So, I had 40 slides here, and they made me cut it back to just 10, and now I've ruined that. But I guess. Okay, you go ahead. We have plenty of services. Come and see us.
So as an executive director and deputy city manager, you make executive decisions every day. And I love that where he talked about click the blue box, go to Workforce Solutions Cameron, because there's so many people that they help every day, and sometimes we're just really don't know what's going on, so really use those services. I'd like to now introduce Ms. Aida Coronado Garcia, currently serving as the Chief Operating Officer for DHR Health Hospital in Brownsville. It'll be our third hospital. We're very excited about that opening up and all the different services and employees they're serving. She completed her Bachelor's of Science in Nursing from the University of Texas, Brownsville, and the Master's in Science in Nursing at Texas A&M Corpus Christi. Aida holds a national board certification with the American Nurses Credentialing Center as a family nurse practitioner. She is pursuing a healthcare administration certification through Texas A&M Corpus Christi. Aida began her nursing career 16 years ago in hospitals focusing on critical care and pediatric oncology. She then went on to join the United States Public Health Services as a commissioned officer. She's a member of the American College of Healthcare Executives, American Association of Nurse Practitioners, and the Texas Nurses Practitioners. Listening to Aida, I would always say she's going from being a nurse to being a COO. I mean, that speaks for itself. She will also share firsthand what's in store for us at DHR Health Hospital in Brownsville. So we're very excited for you to have you here, Aida.
Dr. Galonsky, this is my feeling out of the comfort zone. So this is my first public speaking event, so it won't be my last. So first of all, I'm honored and humbled to have been invited to come here today. I'm extremely nervous, but my name is Aida Coronado Garcia. I'm the Chief Operating Officer and Executive Vice President for DHR Health. The list of achievements at DHR Health continue to grow. We've recently expanded our hospital here in Brownsville. It's a hospital that's going to provide the community with specialized care. And so I'm just gonna go over some PowerPoints. Not that one. So this is an 80 square foot facility. We do have 60 beds. It's a 6 OR facility. We have an emergency room. We have inpatient and outpatient imaging, 3 ICU beds. So it is a general acute hospital that we're going to have here for the community. Our mothership is out of the Edinburgh area, so anything really, really acute, like kidney transplants, will be continued to be done in the Edinburgh area. For phase 2, we do plan on adding an additional 4 ORs to that as well. 2 of those will be cardiac cath labs. So our ribbon cutting will be coming very, very soon. So I'm going to stick to the 2022 because we have had delays with equipment, but we're right there. I can see that finish line. I see the light at the end of the tunnel now. So it's really becoming a reality. These are some of the services that we will be providing. Urology is one of them. Dr. Espinosa is actually from Cameron County, as well as Dr. Asasi. Bariatric surgery. Gynecologic oncology is Dr. Herrera and both Dr. Levine are both physicians that are specialists, the only 2 anywhere from south of San Antonio. General surgery, interventional cardiology, cardiothoracic surgery. Dr. Dan Martinez is actually from Cameron County as well. Endocrine surgery, hepatobiliary, pancreas, and kidney transplant. These are the services that we've been offering at the clinic for the last 5 years. Dr. Cordova Kissy is one of our physicians that sees patients there already. Urology, research is a big one. Urology, gender care, endocrine surgery, endocrinology, and all the ones that I've already mentioned. So the way that DHR has been collaborating with the Texas Workforce and Workforce Solutions Cameron with both Commissioner Alvarez and Mr. Pat Hobbs is DHR was granted a grant, a $1.7 million grant that's going to help us with the Skills Development Fund. And so with this, we're able to help a lot of the women that work at DHR, both men and women, right? But so we're investing into our existing workforce. One of those skills development funds is nurse leadership development courses. So graduate certificates, so if you're a nurse practitioner or PA, you are, if you want to focus on critical care, we can do that. We send you to UTRGV, you get a certificate, and it's all being paid for with this grant. So these are great opportunities. So once you have that on your background, now you can go and apply, hey, I want a raise, I've got more education. Nursing entry-level courses, office development skills, certificates, allied health development courses, project management. And one of the things that we have been working with Commissioner Alvarez is the nursing apprenticeship program. This is going to be a whole game changer. We're hoping, and this is in collaboration with the colleges, and this is statewide. DHR is just in support of this. We're hoping that nurses can get paid for clinicals. Most of the time, when you're going to nursing school, you either choose to work or you choose to go to school. Sometimes you can't do both. Sometimes you have a family and it's difficult to go to school. Well, there's a possibility, it's still not approved, but there's a possibility that we may be able to grant the, pay for clinicals, so they may not have to, or they may not be able to work, but you're going to school, you're going to your clinicals, and you're getting paid for your clinicals. So that'll help you tremendously. And that's pretty much it. I was supposed to talk about myself. And I still took notes, even though I'm talking about myself, but it is what it is, right? So I am 43 years old. I was born and raised in Brownsville. I've never left Brownsville. I did all my education here. I did apply, I did get my Master's of Science in Nursing through Texas A&M in Corpus. I'm the youngest of 6. Only 2 of us graduated from high school. I'm the only one that went to college and graduated with a Master's of Science in Nursing. I did start my first job in high school, and that was in order to be able to help my mother pay for bills. It was never a, what are you gonna do when you grow up? It was always like, hurry up and graduate so you can help us pay for the bills. It was tough, my mother is my biggest fan, and it's somebody that I admire the most. And she'll say, I don't speak English, and that's why she didn't actually want to come today, because she feels that she's not there, right? Thank you for getting emotional, because I'm probably gonna get emotional. It's a passion, but you know, my mother doesn't speak English, she doesn't drive, she had 6 kids, divorced, but I admire her so much. If that woman did have a little bit of education, she would have done wonders. So back then when I was working as a senior, I was making minimum wage, and that was like $4.75. That was when I realized that education for me was gonna be my way out. I didn't want to live paycheck to paycheck. I do have that desire and drive, the INQUIETA in me, and I hope that you can hear that passion that I have for my patients, for what I'm doing now as a woman, as a COO. I never thought I'd be here presenting to other women, because I don't see myself any different from anybody else that's in this room, or maybe, you know, somebody that's higher than me, right? But it's never been easy, and I'm wanting to let you all know that if you're there, just go for it. Being brave, being bold is the only way that you can do things and make a difference. Public speaking is not my favorite thing. It's still not my favorite thing. My heart's still beating 100 miles an hour. But it's getting out of that comfort zone that's gonna help me grow. And so, you know, you have to be brave. You have to, things are not gonna happen overnight. There was a time that I did work 3 jobs. I used to work as a nurse practitioner that I would have to drive to Corpus Christi on a weekend to go around on patients. And so that took away time from my family. Sometimes we would use it as a little weekend trip, but it was tough. It wasn't easy. On top of outperforming and working long hours, I was still criticized for my perseverance. I was labeled aggressive, not assertive, not only from my peers, but from my friends as well, both men and women. As women, we're conditioned to not be aggressive. However, if we're too nice, then we're considered weak. So it's always a juggle, right? I like to think I'm passionate. I'm passionate about everything that I set my mind to. Society has placed women in a box, and it's up to us to lift each other up. It's up to us to help each other and encourage each other and celebrate each other. Celebrate each other, but celebrate your own accomplishments as well. I think that's probably one of the hardest things for me to do, because of fear of being judged, of fear of being considered stuck up, or, you know, whatever, you know, negative thing. So don't undermine your accomplishments. Celebrate yourself. Don't waste time worrying about what people may think about you, because, you know, you can't control that. As long as you're doing good, ignore the naysayers, they abound. Instead, use it as fuel, use it as motivation to help you get to that next step. I'm far from perfect. I don't have the magic pill for success or personal fulfillment. I too continue to learn. But ask yourself, what is it that's stopping you, you know, from being the best version of yourself? You know, you're competing against you. You want to be better than you were yesterday. You don't want to have to compete with your neighbor, your coworker. You want to encourage them. Most importantly, be consistent. Learn how to overcome obstacles and failures, because you will fail. You will be rejected. Hopefully you won't lose friends along the way. But it's how you deal with those disappointments that will determine your outcome. How you deal with that stress. Was I stressed out for a couple of weeks since Helen asked me to do this? Yes. I broke out, you know. So, but it's how you learn to deal with that stress, you know. Are you gonna take up either exercise, or are you gonna go drink alcohol, or indulge in food? So I work out, you know. Make healthy choices, because we're all stressed out. It's how you deal with it. So I hope that my daughters will never underestimate their abilities and are liked for their accomplishments. My husband is here. Babe, thank you for standing by my side. I would not be here without you. And I just want to read The Man in the Arena speech by Theodore Roosevelt. I can relate to the man in the arena. Perhaps you all will too. Please note, I have replaced the word man with woman for today's event. It describes the struggles and how one is willing to risk it all in hopes to succeed. I am deeply inspired by this speech, and I hope you are too. And it reads, "It is not the critic who counts, not the woman who points out how strong the woman stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the woman who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred with dust, sweat, and blood, who strives valiant, who errs, who comes short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming, but who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasm, the great devotion, who spends herself in a worthy cause, who at best knows in the end that triumph of high achievement, and who, as the worst, if she fails, at least she fails while daring greatly, so that her place shall never be with those cold, timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat." Thank you all.
Wow, that was impactful, Ida. Thank you for being real. We talked about it over lunch. I'm going to be a little real myself. You know, we can have a specific moment in our life where we've had tragedy define us our whole life, or we can grow wise as a result of a tragedy. My mother passed away when I was 8 years old. I have 2 sisters, 3 girls, middle child, and my father, he didn't remarry until we were in college, pretty much. But his mother was born in El Paso, Texas. My grandmother, Helen Ramirez Navarrete, will be 99 years old in June 6th of this year. Celia Navarrete had 7 kids, 5 girls, 2 boys. 1 boy, my father, Miguel Angel Ramirez, was the only one at 20 years old to cross the border from Mexico, from Durango, Mexico, to Los Angeles, California. And he started washing cars. He didn't speak English well. He went to his local community college. And from there, he worked his way up through the garment industry. At that time, in the early 70s, New York and Los Angeles were the prime of that industry at that time. He married my mother, also from Durango, and we were all pretty much born and raised in Los Angeles. She died of a brain tumor, but my grandmother said, and speaking about, you know, parents who raised us that do not speak English, she said she left her life in Mexico, and because she was born in El Paso, was able to help raise us, 3 girls, with her son. So my grandparents would come, and they pretty much left their life in Mexico and helped raise us. What's the fortunate part about the way I was raised is that my father never judged us. You see, my father raised us. He was thinking I had to leave my family to really have my opportunity to be an entrepreneur, because I wasn't given that in my household. So I had to leave and kind of make my own journey. And so for my daughters, I want to make sure that I don't prejudge who they're supposed to be, what they're supposed to be like, whatever, because they need to make their own paths. What I need to do is support them and ensure that they're fair and just and treat people right, but I'm not going to hold them back, and he never did. And to this day, I always thank my father for who the man he is. I've always been the non-traditional person. I didn't have a quinceañera. I told my dad, take the money, let's go to Europe. But it's that type of out of the box thinking, you know, and the fact that he was just saying, you know, go with your path, I'll support you. As long as you're a good person and you keep working and keep doing good, I'll support you. And that's the type of male and female parents, you know, we should all try to strive for. Sometimes we're not aware of our own prejudices. You know, we need to stop and think and say, am I showing both sides? You know, am I showing them different paths that are possibly not the traditional type? So I challenge you to think about that next time you talk to your cousin, your niece, your friend, your daughter, your son, and reflect upon that. We're gonna have the panel and lovely food from Lola's Bistro, so if we wanna set up the panel, what I'll do is I'll go ahead and read your bio, panelists, and you can come on down. I know Ida, you know, if you wanna come on down, be the first one. We've read your bio and ready to have you on stage. We have Dr. Natalie Renz. Dr. Renz is the founder and CEO of Astria and formerly a neuroscientist and an AI specialist. Natalie founded Astria and the mission of building a sustainable home in the stars. Wow, how cool is that? Who wants a sustainable home in the stars? Her venture develops sustainable communities on Earth, starting with Habitat Zero in Brownsville, with the goal of advancing towards the goal of settlements on Mars and beyond. So this unique prototype of a home here that could eventually be developed in Mars is what Natalie strives towards. Natalie holds a PhD in neuroscience, a master's in cellular and molecular neuroscience, and a bachelor's in biomedical science. Natalie's also trained in ballet, Latin dance, wow, man, that's better. I'm like, and Israeli martial arts. So watch out for Natalie. Come on down. We have Dr. Valerie Segovia, is the Associate Director of Outreach and Education for Texas A&M Engineering Experiment Station, Nuclear Engineering and Science Center, NESC, and Associate Director of the Nuclear Power Institute. Love the word power there. Segovia began her career with MPI over a decade ago and has created innovative programs that have been implemented across the state. So there you go. She creates a program and it's so successful that it gets implemented statewide, including the 2 NPI flagship programs, Powerful Opportunities for Women Eager and Ready for Science, Engineering and Technology, which is Power Set, and Workforce Industry Training, WIT. She's also a content creator and producer of NPI podcasts, The Path of Most Resistance. So thank you, Valerie, for joining us. Thank you. Karen Daly. Karen, in 2015, hired me to be, so here I am. I've always wanted to be I studied urban planning at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. I always wanted to be an urban planner. And I left California in 2014. I moved internationally. I did international business development in Madrid, Spain for 10 years. And I wanted to come back to Texas to work in government. And I said, who's gonna give this woman who left 10 years and came back an opportunity? And Karen gave me the opportunity. She hired me as the planning director for the city of Hutto when she was city manager there in 2015, one of the fastest growing cities in Texas. Karen is the Mountain Plains Regional Director for the ICMA, International City and County Management Association, which represents city managers across many states. In her role, she is a liaison to 14 beautiful state, city, and county management associations. She retired after 31 years serving 5 Texas cities as the city manager. Mind you, there's only about 14 or 13% of city managers that are women in the nation. Karen's achievements include successful bond elections, major construction projects, improved bond ratings, and increased organizational effectiveness. She is also director of the Texas Women's Leadership Institute, which is designed to promote and support women to become city managers in Texas. Karen has 2 master's degrees, and she is a co-founder of the Texas Women Leading Government. She is a proud mom of 2 grown feminists and is married to a mostly grown husband who is also a musician. Very good musician, I would say. Welcome, Karen. So I'm going to start with, I don't know if you're familiar with the book Lean In. It's a book by Sheryl Sandberg. She was one of the first women board members at Facebook. She's also the senior vice president for Google. What I like to do is when I take vacations, which unfortunately are not that many, I always take a book to reflect. It's a time for my self-reflection, because we as women, many times, we reflect on everybody's life. You know, we reflect on taking the kids here, you know, my husband's appointments, this, that, on the house, but when do we reflect upon ourselves, right? You know, lots of times we're the last ones on the list of the to-do list. So I'm gonna read a passage from the book, and my question to the panelists is, you know, how does this resonate with you? And I don't know if we'll have it on the screen. Monica. So, fear is at the root of so many of the barriers that women face. Fear of not being liked, fear of making the wrong choice, fear of drawing negative attention, fear of overreaching, fear of being judged, fear of failure, and the holy trinity of fear, the fear of being a bad mother, wife, or daughter. Without fear, women can pursue professional success and personal fulfillment and freely choose one or the other or both. So panelists, and I don't know, there's no order of you go first, but you know, please share with us what this passage kind of means to you and how that resonates with you.
So I'll go first, I suppose. So hello, everyone. Thank you so much for allowing me to be here. It is such an honor to be in the room with you all, and most definitely be on the stage here with these amazing women. Thank you. Fear for me, it's always there. That's human nature, right? But I learned long ago when I was very young. It was interesting hearing everyone's stories because I'm the 12th of 13. So I have 6 brothers and 6 sisters. And I was born feisty. And in my home, it wasn't always appreciated. So, but it served me well. And I learned very early that when I was afraid of something, I had a choice. I was very observant, and I would watch how other people reacted to fear. And some people would shut down, some people would run the other way, but I would force myself to run to it. And I've gotten better about that over the years. And there's lots of quotes out there, and there's lots of sayings about running toward things that scare you. But I will tell you, if you do that, you gain superpowers. Anytime something scares you, now again, let's be real here. I mean, you have to evaluate the situation. I mean, you don't want to run into a fire. But things that challenge you, the things that intimidate you, for me, anytime I felt low about myself, I was intimidated by something, I was unsure about something, that's when I told myself, oh no, you're going to do it. And not only are you going to do it, you're going to conquer it, you're going to do well, you're going to master that thing. And I have learned, like many people have said before, that anything that you're fearful of and you run to it, it shrinks. And not only does it shrink, but you obtain and absorb that power of that fear, and it becomes your power. So I would just encourage all of you that, of course, depending on the situation and what the fear factor is, so to speak, evaluate it. But if it's something that you, especially in the times that you feel lesser than, or you don't feel good enough, smart enough, that's when you do it. Run to it, and you knock that sucker out, and you master it. you check that off of your list, you add it to your a list of accomplishments, and you remind yourself that you're amazing, you're worth it, and you deserve to overcome anything that comes before you.
So I work with a lot of women in trying to encourage and inspire them to become city managers. As Helen mentioned, it's a very low percentage in Texas. So we talked about being the only one in the room. A lot of times you are the only one in the room. And I've had a lot of different women say, how do I know when I'm ready? And I had a beautiful, beautiful saying from a colleague who's just a really dear friend as well. And it is, you know you're ready when the excitement outweighs the fear. And so when you're so excited about that opportunity that you're not scared of it anymore or as scared of it, that's when you know you're ready. And I love that kind of balance of fear. I think that's a great way to kind of say, yeah, I'm still going to be scared. I'm still going to be nervous if it's my first presentation in front of a bunch of people, but at least you're able to do it and you're able to jump in and run to it. I love the running into fear. My other great saying that comes out of that from another wonderful friend named Serena is, she goes, baby, you just do it scared. You know, don't worry about it. You know, everyone has to do something for the first time, so you just do it. And you learn, again, you learn and you live through it and you survive. But I think sometimes we will paralyze ourselves with fear, and that will stop us from taking those great opportunities. And later in life, you don't want to look back and go, man, I really wish I had just said, I'd like to do that. And you didn't. And so, you know, doing it and making sure that you understand it's okay to be scared. It's okay to have some fear as you move into those decisions and you make those choices.
Natalie?
I really like the idea of running into fear. It's actually something, if you go to the Israeli martial art you mentioned before, Krav Maga, I remember going to my very first lesson of this. It's what they use in Israel for the Defense Force, and they've actually taken over to the Navy SEALs in the US, so it's quite a brutal, practical martial art. I remember going to the very first lesson for this, having no experience in martial arts, and you get to the end of this, and they call it balagan. This is basically like a crowd fight, and it is the most terrifying thing. As like a first timer into this, you're in a room full of men, obviously, because it's martial arts, and you just have free for all. Anybody can run at each other, throw, like you're supposed to hold your punch, but like throw it, hold it, like, you know, stab you with these like wooden knives, and everyone is running around. And I think it was like that kind of moment where you look into this and you're terrified, and you have to just make that call, just jump in and start, you know, like running, getting part of it, defending yourselves. And the moment that you do that is when you start to feel the power of what you're actually able to do in those scenarios. I think the other thing to think about is why we have fear in the first place. Evolutionary fear was supposed to be a warning sign. You know, you see a lion, you're like, oh, I should probably do something. This thing is threatening my survival or, you know, my success. And once you have that kind of warning sign, you need to then decide whether you have power to act on it or not. Like, some things today are not necessarily in your power. I think there is, you know, fear of social status, fear of what people think of you, etc. Any single time that you post something on social media or LinkedIn, I think like 5 to 10% of it, from my calculations, is just trolling and negativity. You can't really do anything about that. What you can do is control the way that you actually hold yourself in situations. Make sure that you know what your morals are, what your values are, how you're interacting with people. Are you interacting with respect? And basically make sure that you are proud of the way that you are interacting in the business world or personal life. And the other side that you can control is your own success. If you go into a situation, you will never have the ability to calculate everything that could possibly be there, but you do have the ability to make sure that you put 100% effort into those situations. If you can go into that, know that you did everything possible to actually succeed, to get to the top of your business, to be a good leader, then that's the most that you can do, and that's at least how I try to not diminish fear, but take fear and use it to channel it into something productive.
For me, I think us as women, we don't celebrate ourselves enough. I think because of that fear of people thinking that, you know, she's conceited, fear of being judged. So I think we should be celebrating our accomplishments, and we should be proud and celebrate each other. And there's nothing wrong with you celebrating yourself if you've accomplish whatever it is that you've accomplished. So I think you should celebrate ourselves, celebrate yourself.
Helen, yeah, thank you. I kind of want to circle back to the fear of being a bad mother, wife, daughter, because I think that that's something, I call it the mom guilt. You know, having 2 daughters and having had a career, I mean, boy, I could have ruined my children so many times, apparently, you know. Every day, in fact, most of the time, you know. The mom guilt just weighs on you all the time. So, and my oldest daughter has Down syndrome. And so I have a whole different world that I live in, a lot of times as a mom of a daughter with a disability, that really does weigh in on a lot of my actions and where I go. But I think the power of being a woman in the workforce and being a woman in systems and in service delivery and in school districts, and especially the mom part, is extremely powerful. I was venturing into places that I had no idea what I was doing from a standpoint of a policy or why they educated my daughter that way, but I knew it wasn't right. And trying to stand up for my daughter also meant I stood up for a lot of other children to come in the future. And so I ended up, we ended up having to sue one of the school districts where I was the city manager of the city, and I'm suing the school district because they're trying to put my daughter into a very excluded education setting. So it was a very scary time. I was lucky I had the support of my hiring body, the city council, and a lot of support from the community. We ended up prevailing, and everyone was shocked that we won the lawsuit. But it was, and then I would get anonymous calls on the phone. That was back before any kind of caller ID people. She's 29 now. But she would, and they'd say, I heard you're suing the school district. Because of privacy laws, they couldn't say anything, you know, no one could talk about it. But, and they would say, I said, yes. I said, would you like to know why? And they said, yeah, I would. And I would explain the situation, and they go, okay, thanks, and just hang up. So I never knew if I was like, if they agreed or they didn't agree or what. I got 3 of those calls from different anonymous people. But in the meantime, I was scared. I was scared, am I gonna get to keep my job? Am I gonna, you know, have I just ruined this relationship with the school district? But in the end, even the city council said, you've gotta do what's best for your family. And so my mom guilt kicks in, and my mom guilt, you know, stays there. I was fortunate, my husband, being a musician, worked late at night, and so he was home during the day, and he was that weird stay-at-home dad, you know, back in the 90s that nobody else had. But it was a great time for me to kind of like let go of things. I just read a study that said that working women still do the majority of household chores in the family. And I sat there thinking about that last night. I was thinking, oh my gosh, I did that. I mean, I was literally still busting my butt at home, doing all the housework after I got home from being a city manager. And I kept thinking, why did I do that? And they talk about the fact that women still feel like they have to overcompensate even if they're the breadwinner. They still need to overcompensate at home because of the stupid mom guilt. So again, trying to at least recognize and acknowledge that you really can't ruin your children. I swear, I tried. You cannot do it. It really, no matter what you do, you can't do it. So be a great mom and be a great example to them and to other people of what women can do in the workforce, because you add so much more when you are working and contributing in society to the good of society. And also your daughters get to see that too, and that's a really important example.
Thank you for that, Karen. Yeah, my 7-year-old daughter's like, okay, well, Mommy, what are you? You're the deputy, right? So when are you gonna be a city manager? So I get that from my 7-year-old. So that's which I love.
It's a good question, Helen.
So I have another question for you all. What was that life-changing moment in your life that made you want more? Where you placed fear aside and really say, I'm doing that. So what was that moment? I want you to share a time in your life, a moment in your life where it could have gone one way or the other.
Okay, I'll go ahead. Well, Well, again, I think all of our lives are filled with opportunities like that, situations like that, that just really, the hills and valleys of your life. But I think the time that stands out most for me, and it kind of goes back to what you were saying, back when I was very young, I was, 21, 22, and I just had my first baby, and I left his father. It was a bad situation, and I went home which was very hard, to go back to your hometown, back to your mama's house, in a very small community. People always have things to say, and I remember crying every night, with my mama, and looking at my baby saying, Mama, I love him so much. What am I going to do if something ever happens to him? I don't know what I'd do. I just love him so much. You have those new mama hormones going. And then, of course, I was emotionally a mess, and I was embarrassed, and I felt guilt, and I felt like a horrible daughter, and all the things, right? So I was just a big ball of mess. And she said to me, Valerie, please, get a hold of yourself. She said, listen, I had 13 babies, all my babies. And she said, I could make myself go crazy thinking and worrying about you every day. Because no matter how old you are, you're going to be my baby, And she said, what you have to do is just do the best you can every day. Every day. And it may not really be the best, and while you're doing it, it may not be the best, but that's all you have to offer. Just give the best you can. So at night, when you lay down, you have peace. And when you're my age, and your daughter's at home with her baby, you have peace that you gave it all you had. You made mistakes. She said, I made mistakes with y'all all the time, but I hope y'all forgive me, but I hope y'all also knew I was doing the best that I could. And when you go to bed at night, and in 20 years, 30 years, now that I'm a grandma, you have peace that you fought, and you gave it all you had. And of course, because, we're Catholic, and my mother, would always bless us before, we would leave the house, come into the house, and I do with, of course, my own children, but she would always just say, pray over your baby, and of course, bless them. So that was something that was very reassuring to me in a time that I felt so weak. But going back to your initial question, I think it was the moment that I gave birth to my son. I did not realize my own power until I became so responsible for another person. And the love that I had for him and my subsequent other 2 children is so profound that I knew that no matter how low I was or how difficult things were, that I must be the best that I could be in every way. I wanted my children to be proud of me, as I was of my own mother, who did all the right things. My parents divorced when I was about 7. She did all the right things, right? And I had such pride over her always being that mother, that woman for us. So I wanted to be that for my children, and that's when I knew that even when I was the most weak, I was the most strong, because I was still in control, and I was a mama. And when you're a mama for me, that's everything. So being that has made me a better educator, a better professional, a better friend, a better partner in every way, because I want to be what I want my children to see in the world.
Thank you. Very powerful. Natalie?
I have a fairly different, I'm currently single and no kids, so I look forward to one day being in that position. So I think my background was I was quite driven from when I was young to work on, I think, human survival at least, and I did go down an academic path very young, but I did come to a point in my life around my 20s, at least like once I got into my PhD in particular, where I was really battling with whether I was actually making the impact that I wanted to have, or whether I was on the trajectory to really make any difference at all in the world around. And it's probably a little bit obvious, but the kind of defining moment for me was actually reading Elon Musk's biography. I'd gone through this period of wanting to do more, not really knowing if I had the confidence to do that, and then also I was in Australia at the time, and we have this phenomena called tall poppy syndrome, where basically anybody who rises up higher gets cut down. It's not a super supportive culture for ambition per se. And so it was really reading Elon's biography. I was actually staying in California at the time, and soaking in that there's singular human could be so confident in what he wanted to achieve, and he could go out and he could have that vision and do it despite what everyone else said about what he did or what he was aiming to do, despite all the criticism of what he was trying to achieve in the first place. And I started to really reflect on that and think about what is actually more important. Is it going out there and tackling the goals and having the impact that you want to have, reaching the goals that you want to have, or is it being afraid about what everyone else is saying about you, taking into account that kind of like almost egotistical fear about being liked, etc. And that started to just reframe my mind in terms of what did I want to achieve, what was the most important thing to me, achieving that, having that impact, putting other people first, or kind of like being afraid about, the goals. And from that moment on, I started, I think, more down the entrepreneurial route. And then I think with the Starman launch, I'm obviously working in space, kind of working towards the habitation of Mars. But with the Starman launch, I looked at this like very, very massive problem. How do we survive, once we get to Mars? And I looked at what everyone else was doing, and I kind of came to that moment where I decided that if I didn't actually go and make that action, if I didn't start working on this, that it wouldn't necessarily happen, like globally. And that was the most important thing to me, and it exceeded any other like fear or any other kind of like, I think natural nervousness that I had at the time. So.
Thank you, Natalie.
For me, it's been education. I guess because I'm the only one in my family that did go to college. But for me, that's been my life-changing event for me. I know Julian's mentioned in the past, where your grandmother was wearing a white lab coat. That white lab coat, my family thinks I'm a doctor. They don't know the difference between a nurse practitioner and a doctor. And I explained to them, no, I'm not a doctor. I'm a nurse practitioner. But, they see me and they think they're so proud, and I love it. I was texting my brothers last night and my sisters, and we have a group chat, and I tell them, like, please pray for me, please, And so my brothers, who are these manly men and, the ones that tell us what to do, is like, hey, sister, you got 2 brothers praying for you. And that, to me, for my brother to say that, and it's like, oh, I love you guys. And, of course, he just replied, the emoji face with the crazy eyes, right? He didn't say he loved me back, but that to me said he loved me. And for me, that's been my life-changing event. I don't think my daughters see that, but I know now because they're maybe too young. But I hope that I can be their biggest inspiration more than anybody else in the world. But yeah, that's it.
And I much prefer a nurse practitioner over a doctor. They're usually, they listen to you, they do everything right, so thank you. Thank you for doing that. My aha moment was getting denied on a project that I wanted to work on. I was at the city of Arlington, Texas, and we were building a new convention and visitors bureau. And they wanted someone to kind of be not a project manager, but just kind of oversee it and liaison with the city manager's office. And I said, I'd like to do that project. I want to be involved in that project. And they said, no, we're going to give it to the guy, who's got 2 years less experience than you do. We're going to give it to him to do. And I didn't argue about it, and I didn't pout, but I just got more determined at that point. I thought, I'm not going to get the experiences I really need to be a successful city manager if you're not going to let me kind of oversee construction projects. And I love construction. You know, give me a Women Build Habitat for Humanity project. I am there. I'm your girl. But so I felt like I needed to go elsewhere. I wasn't going to get the opportunity that I had. So I tell a lot of young, aspiring female managers, sometimes you have to move out to move up. Because there is a ceiling, or there's a perception, or you're labeled in an organization a certain way. And sometimes you can beat your head against the wall. You're never going to get past that. So you really do have to leave to go up. I left that and moved into an assistant city manager position in a 75,000 population city, and got all the opportunities I wanted. I was never denied when I said I'd like to learn about this or work about that. But if I hadn't decided at that point, I could have sat in that same organization for a very long time and not gotten to the goal that I wanted. And a lot of times I always say it's nice to be able to see one to be one, but a lot of times, sometimes you can't see what you can be. And so there's not an example of someone like you doing what you want to do. So I totally admire Dr. Renz because, oh my gosh, I mean, here she is in this AI field, and she's talking about living on Mars, ladies. I mean, this is like, whoa, you know, it makes me feel like, oh, running a city, you know, I'm living on Mars, yes, you know. So again, I had never thought about that till I listened to her, and I'm like, wow, this is fascinating. I mean, we have so limitless in our opportunities.
So we've heard a lot on the panel: run towards fear, absorb the power, no regrets, it's okay to be scared, and really that emotional intelligence, right? Because many times you're in the room and Commissioner Galonsky, I was talking about, sometimes, you know, if we speak up, you know, some men are like, is she gonna cry? Well, you know, no, she's making a point, right? So the fortunate thing right now is that we have actually time for questions. And so if you have a questions, just raise your hand for our panelists. And we can go ahead and take the mic to you and really and engage in any questions that you may have.
Helen, I want to just really quick.
Sure.
I want to thank every one of you ladies on our DHR table, because you guys have inspired me more than I have ever shared, more than you'll ever know. From all the talks that we've had to, yes, you better take that position, to you better go up there and you better not call Helen back and say, no, I'm not going to do this. So thank you all sincerely from the bottom of my heart.
Ida brings up a really good point in terms of, you know, women supporting women. I hear a lot of comments about, you know, either jealousy, competition, you know, these other things that maybe that get in the way. We get in the way of ourselves sometimes. So, like I said, that emotional intelligence, or being able to have candid discussions on the side, and being able to just support one another, whether you disagree with someone or not, or also speaking up and supporting that person, right? So it's good to hear it, especially if you're gonna take that leap, be that CEO, entrepreneur, you know, that podcast. Everything that you do, we need to hear that support, because lots of times it is lonely. When you're in that C-suite and you're making those decisions, it can be very lonely. So that support network that you can be to one another, even if you disagree, disagree, put it aside, move forward. Because we all need each other to move forward. And so with that, Casey, our first speaker.
Hello,
Tell us a little bit about yourself, Casey, because you have a wonderful trajectory career.
Yeah, okay, so my name is Casey Caballero. I'm a STEM student. I did my master's in physics and an MBA at UTRGV, so born from Harlingen, but I've been raised here in Brownsville as my community. I'm an entrepreneur. I am part of several tech startups, and recently decided to launch my own nonprofit called Project Ascendere. and it's targeted to helping first and second generation students, connecting them with opportunities and mentors that already exist in our communities. Because what Ida was saying is so resonant. Like, a lot of us had to figure it out ourselves. Our parents didn't go to college, so they didn't get to coach us on how to even file FAFSA, or that we could go out of town for internships. So I'm trying to connect that and bridge that gap for all the first and second generation students here, and here are some ladies from my team. So that's a little bit about me, but my question was, because you ladies talk about what has driven you and like the fears you had. For me, one of the stigmas that I still encounter a lot is being a woman that doesn't want to get married or have kids. And I'm not sure if I will never not want to have kids, but right now I'm so focused in my career and giving back that I want to adopt all those first and second generations of my kids. And when I go to my family and tell them I don't want kids, they're like, "Ay, ¿por qué, mija?" Or like, you know, like they get sad, and it does make me feel like, am I choosing the wrong path? And like, so I wanted for you guys to say a little bit about it. A lot of you are mothers. I know Natalie's not. But like, what would be your advice to women that feel that pressure of complying to your family's expectations, but also, I want to be a CEO. I don't have time for kids right now.
That's great. Natalie?
Well, I would say I actually get weirdly different judgment from my mother. My mother is a very, very strong South African woman. She basically brought us up herself, and she's been a role model me to my entire life. And she was always very aware and very supportive of me, you know, taking my own path. I left home when I was 16, and she was like, obviously I think it's hard for a mother, but she was fully supportive of me doing that. And so it was actually, we've kind of had this discussion because I do actually want kids. I'm just obviously slightly focused right now, and she's kind of almost been like, "Are you sure? Like, are you sure you think you can actually like do as much as you want to achieve and like, you know, raise a family?" Because, you know, she had to take the entire burden herself, and so we've kind of had this like reverse kind of argument where I'm no, like I will get there. But I think like for me, I've always put work first. I put my career first. Like I'm stoked with what I do. I definitely want a relationship. I want to have kids, but I also think if you start sacrificing the things that you're truly driven for in order to, you know, force that kind of hand, that you'll ultimately not end up happy. And from my perspective, maybe you guys can speak a little bit more to this. If you're not personally happy in yourself, you will never be the best partner. You will never be the best mother. So I think maybe one of my also like role models is Alma Clooney. I don't know if you guys know Alma Clooney. She's another just like phenomenal like human rights lawyer, like very, very strong. And she kind of was in a similar position where she wasn't finding people, wasn't really sure what was happening, and then, you know, stumbled across George Clooney like when she was like 35, and like they got married, they had kids, they did everything, and that was at least like how it played out for her. And I kind of like hold that in the back of my head, like it's not too late. But I think the only thing I would say is like, yeah, one, like be true to yourself and what you think your goals are. If, you know, there are options that you have, if you're not super sure where you're going to end up later, you're still super young, so I wouldn't think you have to consider that. But there are a lot of people that do not have kids nowadays. There are a lot of people that are single, like Mae Musk is single. She's amazing too. So I think it's ultimately your choice, and just make sure that you kind of like think through that if there is ever a point in time you might change your mind, that maybe at some point in time you kind of precaution for that. But.
Can I just add really quick? But you can be a CEO and be a mother. So it's that bias that we already have in our mind because we think, oh, I'm not going to be able to be a mother and be a professional. You can. I agree. I think, you know, maybe not right now, but don't start putting your life on hold. If later you decide that you do want to have kids, don't start planning before you're even married. You know, it's like, oh, I better not become a CEO because I'm going to get married in 2 years. And so just move forward. Things always somehow fall into place. So don't limit yourself. And you can still be that CEO, and you can still be that super mom.
Or, you know, Or you don't have to be a mom,
Right,
and you could
right.
just be the super CEO, Karen.
Yeah, so some of my really good friends are, and they are way older than you are single, no kids, never been married. I mean, you know, I think the spinster is what you would kind of like the old-fashioned name. And two of them like have no responsibilities, but one of them recently got a dog. And everyone, including her family, said, "Don't do it. You're not responsible enough. I don't think the dog will make it." You know, and she has become the dog mom. You know, so I think that there is a perception that you need to do everything, and I don't think people have to do it, and I don't think you have to explain it. So I respect women who've decided, you know, I'm not going to get married, and I'm not having kids. You know. And again, they don't even have dogs. Just the one friend has the dogs. So, and I know they get questions all the time about, you know, different things. But it is another extremely kind of definite trend in lifestyle choices, I think, for the next couple of generations that are coming up with women. And so I think y'all will change and flip that script so that it's not like something you have to do, but it's something you can do and choose to do, either path you take. So hopefully that pressure will come off. I know culturally sometimes it's really hard, but again, we need more people to flip that script.
And if I can just finish as well, first of all, I want to commend you that you know what you want and you know what you don't want, because that's just as important, right? But going a little bit further as far as family and the expectation, and especially when we're dealing with cultural issues and things like that, it doesn't matter if it's biological, if it's political, if it's financial, if it's whatever. Everybody in your family is going to have something to say. You know, and in some families they say more than other families, and they, depending on your age and your relationship, have, you know, those thoughts and feelings may be more intense than others. But this is why I think for all of us, it doesn't matter if you're just starting out or if you're had many, many years in the game. If you haven't already found boundaries, you need to find them. And I mean not only boundaries for yourself as far as what you stand for, what you don't, but for your family, what you allow, relationships, what is appropriate, what is not. And also, this is really important, especially to you young people out there, the young women out there. You have to teach people how to treat you. And don't answer to anything.
Yes.
Because even some of the people that love us the most, they're loving us the way they were loved. And that doesn't mean that's the way you need to be loved or that's okay. So sometimes we have to teach people how to treat us, how to love us, how to respect us. And remember that it always starts with you. You have to model a lot. But going back to your family, and no matter what, again, whatever the decision is, if it's your career, your biology, your reproduction, whatever it is, you're you. And you're, I'm assuming, paying your own bills, you're being responsible for yourself. Then find out what is important to you, what are your boundaries around yourself, and what relationships you want. Some people that we love very much, sometimes we don't like them very much. And so we can hold them close in our heart, but arm's length in our life, because that's just the way we have to get along. So congratulations that you know what you want and what you don't want.
We have time for one more question.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Dalila Garcia. I'm the founder and leader of FemCity Brownsville. We are in our 5th year. So Casey is actually just joining us because we are a sisterhood that is gonna do things not because of someone else, but in spite of. And so my question to you is, if you wanna join our group, it's Google FemCity Brownsville, and you'll find our website. My question to each of you is, what book can you recommend? I'm a big book reader and literary person, and so what book can you recommend that will help us like lean in? Thank you, Helen, because it's an amazing book that each of you maybe have used or have emulated or helped you to move forward in your life.
There's actually a really good app that I've done because I drive so much, and it gives you like all the, so let's just say the, what's that book, the 7 Habits of, yes. So it'll give you like all the highlights. If you don't have time to read all these books, there's an app that actually gives you all the highlights from all the books. And I will get you that app because I have it on my phone. It's like maybe $30 per month or something like that. You can read as many books as you want, and it gives you the most important points of all that. And that's what I usually do. I hardly ever watch TV because I feel like I'm wasting time. And that stresses me out. Some people use that as relaxing. For me, I listen to these because I feel it's helping me in some way, and hopefully, well, my kids actually read paper books, which I encourage. But for me, I've found that this app is actually really, really useful, and I'll get you the name.
So I have a couple. So since I was just talking about boundaries, Braving by Brene Brown, Dr. Brene Brown, that's an excellent book regarding boundaries, because Braving is an acronym that she uses throughout the book. It's excellent. Bend, Not Break. I think her last name is Ping. I can't remember. There's the book by Supreme Court Justice Sonia Sotomayor. Her book is excellent. And then there's a book, When Women Were Birds. It's lovely. It's poetic, but it's beautiful, and it speaks to a lot of our struggles as well. And for me, I like books. I'm not the best or fastest reader because I have a little bit of attention deficit. But when I do read, I am a person, I don't like to bend my pages, but I like to mark them. I highlight. So that when I want to go back and read a book, I just go back to the highlighted parts that really resonate with me, and it's like meeting an old friend, and sometimes those highlighted parts resonate with me differently. But it's good to hear and to learn more of what other people are going through, those experiences.
So you're the app on paper. So this is the highlighted. Natalie?
I feel like this might be a little bit of a left field answer. I think I typically like to try to take control of situations where I would otherwise, have the opportunity to be a victim. So if I've been concerned about walking around at night or things like this, I go, I learn no martial art. If I am concerned about my success in a business place, then I will read to counteract that. And so my absolute favorite book is actually Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss, who is a international FBI hostage negotiator. And it's just a phenomenal book because it includes a lot of case studies about hostage negotiation and how this applies not only to these kind of extreme situations, but everyday life, your interactions with other people. If you're buying a car, if you're navigating a business environment, if you're with family, etc. And it's fascinating because he essentially came into the FBI and he took this very kind of like objective, like, here is a hostage, here is like this objective exchange of money versus whatever, like let's like win the deal kind of approach. And he started to dive into the psychology of hostage negotiation. And so if you come across another person, first step being, what do you understand about their mindset? Why are they coming into this, conversation with you, or, more extreme situation with you in the first place? And how do you start to use that psychological understanding and all the interactions that you have to obviously try to get a better outcome for both of you at the same time? And so I air tag like every second page in that freaking book, and I go back to it and I take like one little thing. I'm like, okay, like use this trick, and I start like just learning how to use it when I go about daily life to actually come out with, I hope, like better outcomes when I navigate business, but also learn to step into rooms where people are much more powerful and most of the time underestimate you and actually come away with the outcomes you want. So that's fine.
Yes. And I will second Never Split the Difference. It's actually a mandatory read in the Texas Women's Leadership Institute because negotiating is a very important component for women's success. So that's a really good book. I alternate between like funny or escape reading and then kind of more business work reading. I am slogging through the 1619 project right now, which is a very depressing kind of summary of the history or the experience of race in the United States. So that one is very painful, and I try to do a chapter a week on that. But probably my favorite go-to books from a management standpoint are Drive by Daniel Pink, which is really an asset or strength-based approach to management. And I find that's natural for women to do anyway, but sometimes it gives you some really good kind of key suggestions. And then the other one is The Speed of Trust by Stephen M.R. Covey. That book probably has done more to understand the power of teams for me, and kind of the essential components and why a team will break down will be one of those components that's identified in The Speed of Trust. So those are two really good books to use as you become leaders in the community or your workforce or your home.
So we'll circle back. Thank you so much, and send you the list of the books. But I would say that when we talk about rapid fire, Dr. Segovia, we kind of did a pre-panel, and she really challenges us to reflect, right, upon our lives and upon our leaderships. So your homework today at some point is to really answer that: I believe in, I trust, I love, I fear, I forgive, I want, I believe in luck, hard work, or miracles, I persist because. And it kind of forces you to kind of reflect upon your own life and where you want to be. So thank you for that, Dr. Segovia. This pretty much concludes our panel. We actually do have time for one more question, but what I would like to recognize is I was able to meet Gwynne Shotwell, COO of SpaceX, and I didn't know I was going to meet her, but I was preparing for this months ago, and I see her on a Forbes forum on women and leaders. And one of the questions was, what inspired you to be a mechanical engineer? And it's because her mother took her to the university, and there was a women forum like this, and she saw that one of the women was a mechanical engineer, and she was in high school. And lo and behold, when she's on an airplane with Elon Musk, and Elon Musk says, I want you to be my next COO, that doesn't mean that she did not feel fear. She felt fear, but fear didn't overtake her, because they had to land at some point, and she was going to have to answer this man that first of all, won't wait, because one day is like 1 month, right? That's how fast they iterate and innovate. And she said yes. And so even the most successful women have fear. Fear is a natural instinct, right, as Natalie said. But it's what we do with that fear that can make the difference in our lives. So thank you all for flying here, for coming here and being on this panel. And we're going to go on and just to our next presentation.
Thank you, Helen.
See, women can move podiums as well. Oh, okay. So I'm going to introduce an incredible doctor and commissioner. Dr. Rose Gowan was elected to the Brownsville City Commission in 2009. So when we talk about legacies, she has done a lot since 2009 and keeps on going. As a commissioner, Dr. Gowan focused on smart growth, quality of life projects, and health-related issues, raising awareness of the region's high level of obesity and related chronic diseases, such as diabetes. Through her leadership, the city of Brownsville now has a Texas-certified farmers market, And you see the cannery project in the Midi Cultural District, we are gonna have a permanent farmer's market there and working on that project. She was recognized by the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation as a Culture of Health winner and hosts Ciclovia with over 12,000 people in attendance. In fact, you're all invited to Ciclovia May 6th on Morrison. She also received the American Planning Association Award in 2019 as an urban planner advocate for the state of Texas. Yes, a woman commissioner here in Brownsville. Rose currently serves, because we're like, what are all the boards we need Rose on the board of Rails to Trails Conservancy, the nation's most extensive trails and active transportation organization, representing more than 22,000 miles of rail trail and 30,000 miles of multi-use trails nationwide. She also currently serves on the chair of the region's RGB MPO, Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee. Welcome, Rose, and she's going to give a special award to a very deserved. These are your.
Okay, so I got to put the glasses on because I didn't used to have to put the glasses on, but that's the way it goes. So thank you, Helen, for that kind introduction, and thank all of you for coming. It's so lovely on a Wednesday to see a room filled with people, especially women, and a few men. Thanks, guys. Thank you for coming, and you too. What a fantastic panel. I think that I have to thank you personally, all of you ladies, for being part of our conference today, for sure, because that was really, really special. So let me take a minute to tell you a little bit about me. So as I said, I'm 62. I was born and raised here in Brownsville. My father was from Brownsville. He was a teacher and a coach. And my mother was from Oceanside, California. She was Hispanic, born to a single mom. And she and her brothers used to surf on old ironing boards because they could not afford real surfboards, dive for abalone and such. In her adolescence and early adulthood, the Korean War was on, and my father was in the Marines stationed at Camp Pendleton. Young women were told to entertain the servicemen, to be sure and go to the USO dances that were held on a regular basis so that the servicemen would have someone to dance with and be entertained. In today's world, that sounds a bit scary, but in that world, it was about dancing and enjoying music. And at one of those dances, she met my father, and they eventually got married, and he brought her back to Brownsville. The other thing about my mom is that she went to public school. She was very good in math in Oceanside, and she won the math award when she was a sophomore in high school at Oceanside High School. The next, that meant that she had completed algebra. The next level of math was trigonometry in those days, and she was not allowed to take trigonometry. It was the school's policy that no girls be allowed to go beyond algebra because there was no career that a girl would hold that trigonometry was needed for. It wasn't a question of choice, it was a question of that's the rule. And she was always very disappointed that she was not allowed to go do trigonometry. She asked her mother. Her mother said, you know, there's nothing I can do about it, that's just a school rule, and so that's where it ended. When she got married, she wanted to go back to school, to college. She wanted to have a career. She was unhappy being just a housewife. Unfortunately, my dad wanted her to be just a housewife, like so many other women in her generation. If she was alive today, she would be 95, 96 years old. So eventually, she did earn her 2-year degree here at TSC. She was very, very proud of that. But she never was able to accomplish any kind of career during her time. When she and my father divorced, she did go to work as a long-distance operator for AT&T, and she was very, very happy doing that. both my mother and my father encouraged my sister and I to go to school and do whatever we wanted. It was odd that my father didn't want her to work, but he thought it was wonderful for his daughters to go to school. So both my sister and I had college degrees. My sister has a master's degree, and I went on to become a doctor. As a doctor, after you finish medical school, you have to interview to go to residency. So I chose OBGYN, and there were 5 or 6 places that I chose to interview at. And before you went to your interviews, the counselors at UT Southwestern, where I went to school, kind of coached you what to say, what not to say. All girls in my class were told, don't talk about getting married, don't talk about wanting children, and definitely don't talk about wanting children during the years that you're going to be in the residency. I didn't think much of it other than I didn't like it, but that's what all the girls in my class were told, and all the girls in all the medical schools were told. So I went to my interviews, and at each place, always one of the questions was, how were you going to deal with being a woman, a mother, and a doctor at the same time? So I had these standard answers that I had, would knock out when they asked those questions. And on my last interview, I was tired. It was Baylor in Houston. And the lady said, is there anything I haven't asked you? And so sassy me said, well, you didn't ask me how I'm going to be a doctor, a mother, and a wife at the same time. And then I thought, oh my God, I said that out loud. and the woman said, did somebody ask you that? And I said, yeah, at every single institution that I went to. She said, well, that's an illegal question. And I looked at her and I said, what do you mean? She said, do they ask the men how they're going to be a dad, a husband, and a doctor at the same time? I said, well, probably not. She said, do they ask the men if they're going to have children during their years of residency? Or I said, probably not. She said, that's an illegal question. Shame on them. And she said, you know what? The secret is, Rose, that you hear about all the failures of women who couldn't manage to get all of that together. But you don't hear about the successes. And there are a lot of successes, Rose. So if that's what you want, then you make it happen, or you try to make it happen as best as you can. And then if you're successful, then talk about it, because we need to hear more about the successes in addition to the failures. Fast forward years later, I'm an obstetrician gynecologist. I decide, together with my husband, to move our family back home in 1994. That's not that long ago. 1994, I'm on staff at Valley Baptist and Valley Regional, although my home base is Valley Baptist. And there was one call room for labor and delivery, all men except for me. The hospital did not offer a second call room. I asked, but they said there was no room. And so one night, and when I was in that room, if a man came in to change into scrubs, I was asked to leave. But if I had to change into scrubs, I had to go into the bathroom because nobody got up to leave. And one night, it was 2 o'clock, I was tired, et cetera, et cetera. I sat down at the table, I was looking for the remote as I was waiting to do a delivery. And to find the remote, I had to move a pair of men's boxer shorts off the table to get the remote. And that was my defining moment, as Helen described. I thought, enough is enough. This is ridiculous. So the next day, I went to the CEO, who's not the CEO now. That was like several CEOs ago. And I said, I've had enough. I want a call room. I want it today. This is sexual harassment. I'm not going to take no for an answer. Yay. And I gave the story about the boxer shorts, and he just kind of chuckled. And I thought, blank, blank you, I want my call room. So I got a call room. Thing is, they gave me the nurse anesthetist call room. So now the men doctors didn't care, and now the nurse anesthetists were mad at me because I took their call room. And they were relegated to one way off the unit. But, so that's the way it goes. my mom had a terrible stroke several years ago, and I went to California to get her and make sure she was okay. And she was in the ICU after brain surgery, and she really felt like she was going to die, and she was going to die that minute. And she kept looking at the clock saying, I think I have 5 more minutes, I think I have 5 more minutes, I think I have 5 more minutes. And so my husband and I were trying to distract her. So we were talking about things that she liked to do, and I said, Mom, what is it that you're most proud of in your whole life? If you had to tell me just one thing, what would you be most proud of? And she said that my daughters both graduated from college. So when I'm 84, I don't know what I'm going to say to that question. I don't know what you're going to say to that question. But hopefully, it will be something that propelled your children or the people that you love if you choose not to have children, because let's face it, not everybody wants to have children, and that's fine too. But something that will make the next generation better. So I hope that my daughter never has to move boxer shorts to get the remote, and that if she wants to have a career and a family, or doesn't want to have a family, that she's able to make those choices with a head held high and support of the people around her that love her. So that's who I am, that's my story. Next time you see boxer shorts, you'll think of me. Before we conclude today's conference, I'd like to take a few minutes to acknowledge a team in our audience, and that's the Brownsville Chamber. If you could stand, please, to be recognized. And I believe there's an award for you right behind you. And I believe under the leadership of the Brownsville Chamber, you have provided essential services to the business community. We thank you for your service and for being an outstanding role model for women in our community. Also, a very big thank you to Helen and the team at the CVB and GBIC for putting a great conference together, to all of our speakers. And all of you have a wonderful rest of your week. Was that okay? There.
And our businesses were really suffering, and we have these COVID funding. The chamber really, as me and her team, really stepped up and led many of the programs, made the thousands of calls to our businesses, our small businesses, whether they were chamber members or not. And they really stepped up, you expanded, and you really took control between the city, GBIC and BCIC, and the chamber, but really chamber leading and making those calls. The boots on the ground, the calling, bilingual, and really those programs that you really carried out. And so for that, we commend you. We couldn't have done it without you. This business community is thankful, and I just wanted to make sure that you were recognized for that. I'd like to have a special thank you to all our high school students and professors that were here joining us today, to our platinum sponsors, DHR, Brownsville Public Utilities Board, the City of Brownsville, our partners for the state of Texas, TWC, Texas Workforce Commission, DHR, and Workforce Solutions Cameron. Also to our fearless speakers. Wow, man, that was a great panel. We could have been here all day probably just talking about having real talk, authentic talk. Thank you to the Greater Brownsville Incentives Corporation. I always like to say that extraordinary people accomplish extraordinary results. You are all extraordinary people in this room, women. And you are and will accomplish extraordinary things. I'm going to special recognition to this tireless staff who really made this possible. Carla de la Riva, Stan, Constanza Miner, Elsa Galvan, Elisa Rodriguez, Ramiro Aleman, Communications and Marketing, Monica Tellum, COB Enterprise Applications, our IT people, Event Center staff, and our inspirational speakers. Of course, each and every one of you that took the time to be here, but it doesn't end here. We do have this whole event is it Facebook or is it Facebook? Facebook and YouTube. So spread the word, that we're here, and this event is important for our community, and just taking the chance the opportunity to participate in this event. Make the most of your INQUIETA event, and as everybody said, teach people how to treat you. I think that was one of the phrases that we both remember from here. Also, nobody can have lunch without dessert. So that's why we called it what better way to network than with dessert. So perhaps you take the moment to really find your next mentor, your next mentee, take a cool headshot, a professional headshot. We have headshots here. Take a goodie swag bag. There's medical screenings, but just talk to one another. Maybe you answer those questions that on that other slide that we had for you. But just network, get to know one another, exchange business cards, talk about the latest app, but just really enjoy yourselves the rest of the day. We'll be headed in is it the other room? Already here? And then just thank you all for coming. Gracias.
Could we get the speakers and panelists at the front for a photo, please?